Speaker, let me say from the outset that the Labor opposition will support the bill. It is a fact that in the original Policing Act, as I understand it, specified that there was a framework. The 1958 Act, as the bill says, is a framework for prohibiting police from standing in local authority elections. But the additional step, that is, as the bill states, is the naming of the relevant local authorities and regulation was never taken. It is a fact that in 2008, the Labor government, Labor coalition government at the time with New Zealand First, passed the Policing Act of 2008, which did put, as the Minister said, the prohibitions in place. Let me say that one of the reasons for that, or one of the primary reasons at that time, is a political reality, sir, that I'm sure all members in the House are aware of, that one has coalition partners and one has demands from coalition partners, as this government has certainly from theirs. And this was a demand made, I think, from New Zealand First, and Ron Mark at the time, I think, led the charge on it, was particularly passionate about it for a variety of reasons, and it was agreed to. I would join the Minister, I know this is a rare occasion, but I would join with the Minister in expressing, my colleagues have noted it, another black mark against my name. I would join with the Minister in expressing, like her, my view that I think this bill, or the previous legislation, affected around 5 serving police staff. One of those who actually resides in my electorate, a very good, in my view, as all my councillors are in the Waimakariri district, one Constable Robbie Bryan, and things like managing conflict of interests, around issues of, say, implementing bylaws that the constable may be, as a councillor, voting on in a council capacity with the epaulets off, and then having to implement with the epaulets on and the hat on as a policeman. I know Councillor Bryan and the other serving police officers who are serving councillors. Those conflicts of interest, I think, have been managed pretty admirably by the police professionals who also serve as elected officials. I'm sure, though, there will be those in the community who will have a view to the contrary, but I think, in essence, I can speak specifically about my patch, that the police constable who is a councillor, I think, manages those very professionally, and I think, as all my councillors do, does an admirable job. I would say in passing, though, that it is a pity that this couldn't go before a select committee, although I acknowledge that local body elections are relatively close, but our side of the chamber would still argue that there was time, and I know we would have cooperated on this issue in respect of, if you like, a turbo-boosted select committee process to at least examine the issues and perhaps give organisations like the Police Association and others a chance to express a view around this. I want to say, again joining with the Minister, that our police staff who act as leaders within our community on local authorities do a pretty superb job. In fact, you could argue that, being in the nature of police work, you would bring, certainly if I can use the Waimakariri District Council case, we have a safer community council as many other districts and cities do. I think it actually adds to the expertise of a local authority to have a law enforcement officer as part of, not only just as part of the discussions, but as an elected official who can bring his or her, in this case his expertise, to the table around these issues, especially in smaller towns like, say, in this case, Rangiora or Kaiapoi or Oxford in my area, where police are community leaders. They're almost like, whether they are elected officials, especially in towns like Oxford, they're almost treated like elected officials, probably with a heck of a lot more respect, I might say, but they are on call 24 hours a day. And whether they are in the blue uniform or, you know, in the plain clothes as a councillor, people know them because they have a high profile as police officers, and they are on call, as I say, as elected officials are when they wear the blue uniform, 24/7, or whether they don't. So I think this is a good bill. I would have preferred, as I say, for an expedited examination of the issues pertaining to this bill through a select committee process, because I think for two reasons. One, it is always appropriate to health check legislation and make sure we've got it right. But secondly, I think it might have actually demystified some of the, and maybe some of the criticism from some in the community where police do have this dual role. And I think it would have actually given a chance for, if not the policemen who are councillors themselves, but certainly the Police Association and others to highlight the appropriateness with which those 5 serving staff act as elected officials, but secondly, perhaps also highlight some of the advantages in the additional skills which law enforcement officers can bring around the council or community board or local authority table. Certainly I don't think that it is a disadvantage in having a sworn staff member or constabulary staff member as a local authority. I think it actually only can add value because local authorities today delve deeper and deeper into social issues, especially when it comes to community safety. I've talked about safer community councils. When it comes to combating youth crime, many of our councils, again I'll go back to my own Waimakariri District Council, are taking greater and greater responsibility for looking after their own patch and assisting the police and law enforcement and engaging in programs, especially around youth crime, and wanting to take greater responsibility for those issues. And having a police person who is not only assisting with advice in that capacity, but also as an elected official, I think provides some additional mana, but also provides a higher level of expertise as one who can, stand up around the council table and obviously managing, being careful to not speak as a sworn police officer, but speak as a person bluntly in a job where you do have experience. But treating that fine line, I think, can only add and enhance the debate and the skills and the knowledge that local authorities can have. I know there are some, as I said at the start, who say, hey, isn't there a difficulty constitutionally with, if you take, for instance, the boy racer issue where councils are implementing bylaws and, maybe the case that the police officer is called to vote and speak on a bylaw, say about boy racing in restricted areas, and then put on the blue uniform on a Friday night and go and implement those bylaws. There are those who may say, hey, isn't there a conflict of interest in respect of that? I don't think that there has been a time, certainly in my knowledge, where those conflicts of interest potentially have not been able to be managed either by the local authority itself and or the constable who is the elected person. And I think common sense prevails. Like any issue where there's a conflict of interest, there's the ability to declare it and to walk away from the table, walk out of the room and say, hey, it is too close to my professional occupation as a police officer or any other professional occupation, a lawyer, a doctor, whatever, and say that I'll walk out of the room and I will leave those issues in abeyance for the council to decide. And I think I certainly haven't seen, maybe others haven't seen examples where those issues haven't been appropriately managed. And of course, if they aren't appropriately managed, the officers are responsible to their hierarchy, and ultimately, of course, like we've had issues of conflict of interest in regional councils, even in my own patch, where the Auditor General has come in and made judgments about that. So I think there are basic and common sense mechanisms in place where if people are concerned about a conflict of interest, they can be managed both by the common sense of the officer/councillor, both by the powers under the Local Government Act and through the Auditor General, and equally through the authorities and disciplinary processes and common sense of police hierarchy, superintendents, district commanders and the like. So in essence, the Labor Party will support this legislation. I think it is, we believe it is appropriate. We would have just, I suppose, liked to have seen it go through the quality control process of a select committee, but we support the legislation.